Hey guys, Movie Fan 56 here for the Arrow after show. We're talking about season 3, episode 6, entitled Guilty. And if you guys never watched my after shows before, I go down the positives of the episode, the negatives about the episode, and then that's pretty much about it. That's how I do it. Um, so season 3, episode 6, entitled Guilty. Basically, the plot of this episode was about um, it pretty much focused on Ted Grant, the guy who's training Laurel in her fight club, and he's being framed um, for all these murders that are happening, and Oliver has to try to figure out, well, is Ted Grant innocent or is he guilty? And that's basically the plot of the episode. Now let's get into the positives. Oliver trying to be a good mentor to Roy. As you guys know, don't like Roy. Never have. Even when he first came on the show, I never really liked Roy, except when he was on Mirakuru and he was going all batshit crazy. I did like him then. But the fact that Oliver is trying to be a good mentor to Roy, he's trying to teach him. I think that this is something that could go um, it could go good if it's executed right. And the writers of the show have never really disappointed me when they decide they're going to take something and they're going to run with it as a storyline. They never really disappointed me. So I'm hoping that this will change my opinion on Roy, because I do want to like Roy. It's not like I just because I don't like him now doesn't mean that I won't like him later. Um, because I do want to like Roy, I just haven't. Um, when Roy, as you guys know from last week's episode, Roy was dreaming that he killed Sarah, that he was the one who killed Sarah. So in this episode, Roy is asking for a blood test from Felicity. He goes to Felicity, and no one else knows about it. And he tells Felicity, he's like, look, I need a blood test. I can't really tell you why just yet, but I kind of need one done. And I like that Roy can trust Felicity enough to do it, and I like that Felicity trusts Roy enough to say, yeah, look, I'll do it. I don't really need an explanation. I'll do it for you. That's cool to see. Um, Ted Grant as a suspect. This is how my positives. Yes. Because the character of Ted Grant is just kind of there. He's only really there to train Laurel. So to have this episode kind of revolve around him and for him to be a suspect, I think it's an interesting take to go with the character. Now, I don't know. I don't really, at this point, I don't really like the character of Ted Grant. I don't. Um, so to have him as a suspect, maybe he could go to jail. I kind of like that idea. I know. Am I being too hard? Um, Oliver and Laurel fighting over Ted's innocence. Now, again, Laurel is somebody that I liked in season 1. Season 2, I didn't care for, and in season 3 so far, I'm not really caring for her either here. But this whole thing of Oliver and Laurel arguing whether is Ted innocent or not, that's a good thing. It was good to see the tension between the two, and it kind of gave Laurel a big purpose again, at least for this episode. Ted versus Oliver. There's a moment where Oliver goes somewhere where Ted is at, and they fight. And the dude's a pretty good fighter, because we obviously know that he's a boxer. He's training Laurel, so he is a good fighter. So we know that. But to see him going toe to toe against Oliver Queen, the Arrow, was a badass scene. And I'm gonna mention this again because I mentioned this before. Um, Arrow truly is, and I mean this. Arrow has the best stunts on television. The Flash, I would go on record to say that the Flash has the best special effects, but Arrow for sure has the best stunts, and that whole sequence was choreographed perfectly. It was badass. I loved every minute of that, not just because that Ted was gonna get his ass kicked or anything, because he held his own. Um, to be honest with you. The Arrow team trying to figure out if Roy really killed Sarah. Now, Felicity finds out there's no Mirakuru in Roy's blood that she can find anyway, and Roy goes ahead and tells the rest of the Arrow team, with Laurel there, that he thinks he killed Sarah. And uh, the Arrow team is trying to figure out, well, did Roy really kill Sarah? We don't know. I'd like to think not, but it could, it's possible, and I like that they are trying to figure something out. They gave Roy they're giving Roy a good storyline right now, and who knows, maybe in an episode or two, I will finally come around to Roy. I'm hoping so, but who knows? Um, Roy versus Isaac Stansler. Now, Isaac Stansler is this guy who um, that Ted Grant kind of worked with back in the day, because we find out that Ted Grant was a vigilante before Oliver called the Wildcat, and Isaac Stansler was his sort of Roy. He was like his Roy, and there's even a moment where he says that he's like, look, you know that guy in the red hood that follows him around. That's who Isaac Stansler was to me, and we find out that Ted Grant's innocent, and Isaac Stansler is the one who's doing it. And there's a badass fight, and this fight is badass between Roy and Isaac Stansler. They're making Roy a really badass. So I'm starting from this episode. I'm starting to come around on Roy a little bit. Hopefully that continues throughout. Um, but yeah, that fight was badass. And there's a moment where Isaac Stansler says, "You really think you're important? You're just a weapon in his arsenal," referring to Oliver. And which brings me to my next positive, the fact that's how Arsenal got his name. They're calling Roy Harper Arsenal now, which I don't know too much about the comics. I heard people saying that he goes by the Red Arrow or he goes by Arsenal in the comics, but I know there's an Arsenal in the comics. Um, so I never really read that stuff, so I don't know too much about it. But the fact that that's how Arsenal got his name, I thought that was a neat little way to put it in there. It didn't really feel forced, because I was worried. I'm like, with a name like Arsenal, it's gonna feel forced in there. How can you do that without sounding corny and cheesy? But they found a way to make it work. You're just you think you're important. You're just a weapon in his arsenal. And then Oliver goes, maybe that's what we should call you then, as like a joke. I think. Um, he kind of said it like a joke, but obviously he's serious because that's what he is now. The meditation in the flashbacks made sense by the end of the episode. Yeah, there's this whole thing in the flashbacks in Hong Kong, um, where they're trying to get Oliver to meditate because they say if you meditate, you're gonna remember stuff that you don't remember now. And I'm like, okay, I don't get this. What is he? I don't get the point of that. Um, like I know it makes sense because I know he was trying to look. I didn't see the guy drop anything in there. Um, but then if you meditate, you're gonna start to remember. Oh yeah, I did see it. I get it. But I didn't care for it. But by the end of the episode, that mirrors what's kind of going on in present day. Oliver asks Roy to meditate. He's like, "Look, you're gonna remember if you killed Sarah or not if you do this." And it all made sense. You find out that Roy didn't kill Sarah, and he actually killed a cop when he was on Mirakuru, and Oliver and Sarah saw it, and and Roy goes, "Why didn't you tell me that?" And he's like, "We were hoping that you wouldn't remember." So when you're seeing that you're killing Sarah in your dreams, you're actually just remembering that you killed the cop. I thought so that all made sense. Now let's get to the negatives. I do have a few negatives. Laurel's Fight Club training, that's going to be on here every time that's brought into an episode. I don't care. I know that she's going to become the Canary. I've accepted the fact that she's going to become the Canary. I just don't like the idea. And the way, I mean, at least if they had a cool way to do it, I would probably be okay with it. But her just training, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be more than this. I'm hoping it's just going to be more than her fighting with Ted Grant, or a little fight club, as I call it. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that Ted was a vigilante called the Wildcat before Oliver came home. I'm like, well, you'd think we would have heard about it before. And he mentions it. He's like, well, how come I never heard about this before? Oliver says that to Ted. He goes, well, I pretty much just stuck with the Glades, and, I never got arrested or anything like that. So it makes sense. It's just stupid. I don't like the fact that there was another vigilante before Oliver. Um, but that's just my opinion. Stansler was Ted's Roy. Um, so you're saying to me that Roy could become a bad guy eventually in the future if he goes down the same path? I mean, that could be interesting, but I don't like the whole fact that Stansler was kind of compared to Roy. I'm like, because right now they're, like I said, I'm not the biggest Roy fan in the world, but I'll defend that. I'm like, look, Roy is no Isaac Stansler. Um, and this Diggle telling Oliver to drop Roy. Um, Diggle's always been like the voice of reason. He's like, look, this is how you need to do it. And if you want everything to be safe and justified, you do it this way. And Diggle telling Roy or Oliver to drop Roy, I'm like that's going a little too far. I'm like, even if he did kill Sarah, it was because of the Mirakuru. It's really not his fault. That's going too far. Oh God, I'm starting to defend Roy. Oh God, I never thought this day would come. I really, really didn't think so. But Stephen Amell always tells us, have faith in the show, have faith in the writers. If you don't like something, just hang in there because 98% of the time, we're going to change that eventually. Um, and so I'm hanging in there and I'm starting to like Roy a little bit. So well done, Guggenheim and all the writers on the show. So guys, that's all of my positives and negatives for this episode. What did you guys think of Guilty Season 3, Episode 6 of Arrow? Let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. That's all I can say for today, and I will see you guys in the next video.